Good evening. Happy Sunday, everybody. I think book club is perfect on Sunday evening. Happy y'all are here. I read this book a couple years ago and I've enjoyed diving back into it. I should have done that a long time ago. But I am Leslie B. True Crime in a Minute, Leslie B. This is Leslie B, whatever you want to call it. But I just started following this case a while back and I can't get enough of it, as many of you know. So I started creating videos, and next thing you know, it just kind of took off. But this is not my full-time job, obviously. I have a job. So, but I love it. I love being here, and I love all the subscribers and our community. We have awesome folks here. So I am excited. We are going to start our first Sunday book club. And we are reading the book by Ruth Markel, the mother of the victim in the Dan Markel murder, the Unveiling. So this is our first one, but I want to welcome. Thanks, Laura. Welcome. Thanks for becoming a member. Great to see you, and great to see everybody. Crimesters, Andrew, Kristen. Hey, Marcia. She says this book is really interesting. I've already read it. I bought mine from Amazon for my Kindle. Yeah, I definitely recommend everybody buy this. And because of copyright rules, we can't just go and read the book straight to you. But I've made like a little bullet points just for us to review. But I'm looking forward to hearing what y'all picked up on as well. It's fun to get Ruth's firsthand account on Donna and Harvey and Wendi, Dan's ex-wife. Hey, Kristen, so good to see you. And John Smith, Mia Wallace, hello. Juliet, always great to see you. Hey, Marcy. And I know some people are like, why do they say hi to everybody? Because I want to. Hey, 4 of 6, great to see you. Oh, Marcia, you're from Michigan. Awesome. Andrew, I know you're in South Florida, down in that neck of the woods where the Adelsons lived. And Mia, you're so sweet. So glad you're doing this book club. I too read this book. It is excellent insight into what was done to the Markel family by the unindicted co-conspirator. Macatinum, am I saying that right? I just watched a video on how to pronounce it because it's in my little presentation. So I apologize. Hey, Jane for Justice. Good to see you. And yeah, awesome. Happy y'all are here. So I did do a little Google slide deck with my talking points. I took a bunch of notes today and yesterday in my food truck notebook, which was just appropriate. And if you know, you know. So Macatunum, Mia. Hey, Nancy, good to see you. Oh, hey, Margaret from Michigan. I love listening to you because you make your podcast so personal, like you're talking to each and every one of us. Oh, well, thank you. You know, I have that set where the YouTube's videos and the lives go to podcasts, but honestly, I didn't know that people listen to them, but I've been hearing more of that. So that's awesome. Happy Fun Day Sunday. Yeah, the original Fun Day Sunday is definitely Josh Ritter with Courtroom Confidential, and I didn't even get the chance to watch his today. So I will catch that later. Okay, thank you. Jane for Justice says, Makatunum. Makatunum is a Yiddish term for the parents of your son or daughter-in-law. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So real quick, I thought I pulled a video from, I believe it was the local Tallahassee News. It's just like a little minute segment about Ruth Markel's book. Just for anybody new here, just thought I would show a little history of it for a second before we kind of dive into it tonight. So
I was in shock. I was numb. I could tell you that I had an out-of-body experience.
It was the first time Ruth Markel made public comment in nearly a year. She greeted dozens of community members who gathered at Shomrei Torah to hear Ruth speak about her book, The Unveiling.
The first reason why I chose The Unveiling is to give a voice to grief.
Ruth says the title of her book was inspired by the overwhelming emotion she felt when Dan's headstone was unveiled.
It was the impact of seeing the actual tombstone covering the actual burial site. That's when I started my deep, deep journey in grief.
Ruth turned the grief of losing her son into political action when it came to her grandchildren. She says because of the Markel Act in 2022, which allowed for grandparent visitation rights, she and husband Phil have visited their grandchildren 3 times. It's a story like Ruth's that inspires readers like Coral Cristino to deal with their own grief.
I'm hoping that it gets me from being stuck in neutral to being a little more proactive, if not for my granddaughter, then for my own mental health. Mrs. Markel is a pillar of strength. She's so graceful.
I was in shock.
Sorry, I was on mute. So what I was going to say, the reason I was drawn to this case, multiple reasons, but one of the main things was I identified with Ruth because I too lost a child. Now, my child was not 41 years old and murdered like her son. But if you've lost a child as a mother, you just have an instant bond with other mothers. So I'm proud of what she's done. She's turned her grief into purpose. And she talks about that in the intro of her book. And it's so important when you're a mom who's lost a child, you meet a lot of other moms on a similar journey. And there are those that choose to use that as their identity, to be the forever victim. You can do what you want with it and what you make your life to be. I chose to live and continue to be positive because I know in the end and in the afterlife where I will be with my daughter. And I just really respect Ruth. So here we go. The Unveiling. Let's see. And I am sorry that if I mess up the pronunciation. So The Unveiling, A Mother's Reflection on Murder, Grief, and Trial Life by Ruth Markel. So her son was murdered in 2014. Then arrests and trials started happening. And she writes about what it's like to live the trial life and all of her firsthand experiences. So I'm excited that we'll get to dive into it. Mia, thank you. Denotes masculine plural in Hebrew, pronounce im, which is the plural for all male or combined collection of male and female, plural for only female group. Oh my God, that's a lot. Yeah, I know. I was on mute. I know. I'm sorry. And hey, Audrey, good. I'm glad that you're driving home. Be careful. And thank you, Juliet. Oh, I appreciate it, Rosemary. Thank you. I really am not trying to have a pity party. That's not, I just want to explain the connection. So, oh, Nap Connoisseur. Always good to see you. Deidre, I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. Okay. So here we go. Let's go through the slideshow. So the first thing we talked about doing the first 2 chapters tonight, but there was also the intro. So I just thought I would start with that. And this is where Ruth kind of starts her book. And she's in Tallahassee. So it's September of 2019, late September. And it's the first trial. And she's just saying how hot it is, right? So she's Canadian. And she reflects that Dan was 41 when he was murdered. I mean, 41. It was July of 2014. And Ruth talks about how she was feeling haunted. She looks in the mirror, right? She's getting ready to go to trial. and she's wearing something appropriate, she thinks, for the camera, for the jury to see her, to face the defendants, Katie McVanois and Sigfredo Garcia. She said she wore just her, her black suit. She's a businesswoman. And she just looked in the mirror and she said she felt haunted, defiant, devastated, and battle ready, which I thought she couldn't have summed it up any better. Yeah, Juliet, exactly. Ruth's book dedication is noteworthy. Oh, I don't want to get a copyright strike. Now, if you read from the book, let's see. Yeah, she dedicates to Shelley, her daughter, who was Dan's only sister, only sibling, for the love and support and dedication. Her grandchildren, Michael, Ari, Roni, Benjamin, and Lincoln, who were both Dan's sons, who have the courage to make what looks impossible possible. And special mention to Phil, who is Dan's father. They did get divorced, but they have a good relationship. And Ian, who is Shelley's husband. So it's Ruth's son-in-law, who share this tragedy and journey. Thank you for pointing that out, Juliet. Marcy, it's okay. We understand. We're just happy you're here listening. And Millie, I know it's small print, so we're happy you're here too. Hey, Maestro. Great to see you, Cheryl. Yeah, I was on mute earlier. I know. Nap. Yeah, you enjoyed the recent photo of Wendy. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I had to do a double take, but stress will do a lot of things. I'm hoping y'all are hearing me now. Okay. All right. So we went through kind of a little bit of the intro and the dedication of the book. So anybody else who's read this, I want y'all to say, type in the chat like what you want to share. Hey, Tater. I haven't seen you lately. It's good to see you. Hey, my pups. Blue River. Here for today. Yeah, you read the book last year, didn't have a chance to refresh. Well, that's what we're here for. All right. Let's go. So then also in the intro, Ruth talks about what an unveiling is, and we just watched a video of that from the news. So in the Jewish faith, when one is buried, then when the gravestone, comes, they unveil it 9 months after the burial. I believe it's always 9 months. I know I've been invited or asked to join in one, but then they, I guess, unveil it essentially. So it's when everyone sees the gravestone for the first time. And Ruth talks a lot about how you feel like all of a sudden now you're in a murder case, right? So you're not even just getting to grieve normally. You have to perform. And what I mentioned earlier is that she wants to find purpose in her grief and loss. And I don't think there's ever been a more graceful person than Ruth Markel to show us that. Her strength is pretty unbelievable. Oh, Blue River, you said Ruth and Phil aren't together anymore? No. They divorced. They separated, I think right before Dan was murdered. Linda said you finished Ruth's book today. Hard read. Yeah. But I think it's a really good book. I mean, it's written so well. When the first time I read it in 2 days. You purchased it on audiobook? Yeah, I love audiobooks. Where did you find the new picture? I saw it on Reddit. I think somebody got it off Instagram. I don't know what's going on. It's pretty crazy, but I imagine she's here watching. So, hi, Wendy. Linda says, I didn't know that Ruth asked Jewish services down here if they could intercede if arrests were to take place. And Jill Estrada flipped out. Jafco, yeah. So in the trial, a lot of times when they'll ask about it, Wendy's like, well, she threatened to put the children in foster services. no, that what she wanted to do, what Ruth wanted to do in the event that Wendi was arrested. She wanted a Jewish foster agency, so not just, state of Florida foster care, right? To have the boys until Ruth could get there from Canada. I mean, she's over, like 1,400 miles away. You can't just get to Tallahassee in the snap of a finger. Oh, Juliet. Wow. Irony. 9 months to give birth to son and 9 months to unveil his gravestone. Wow. I wonder if that's why they do 9 months. Does anybody know? I'm not Jewish, so I don't know. My pup listens. Do you think Wendi took out her blue contacts, left her hair curly, changed her name so no one would recognize her? I'll be honest, when I saw that picture, if I were to walk by her on the street, I would not know that was her. It's put a lot of stress for sure. Yeah, Juliet, that was great. Yeah, here for today. It wasn't foster care. It was just respite care until Ruth could get there. Yeah, and then Georgia says in one of the trials, you didn't really think she was going to put him in foster care, and she's like, I don't know. I mean, come on. Here for today. I would have cut my hair and dyed it blonde if I was Wendi. Oh, thanks, Linda. You said unveilings usually take place within 1 year of the funeral. All right, Blue, we understand you're in lurk. Okay, chapter 1. So Ruth, she's such a great writer. Y'all have to read this. This is not going to do it justice. But Ruth is reflecting on what she and Dan would do. So they would speak on the phone in the car when he was driving on the way home after work. And he would always end it when he pulled into the garage, which I found kind of gave me chills since that's where we know he was shot. He would never talk on the phone with his mom when the boys were in the car because he always wanted the boys to have his attention, which I loved to read about that. Andrew, she's eating a lot of enchiladas. Kristen, unindicted co-conspirator disguise. Could be. It could be. Dan, as a little boy at age 12, he wanted to be a rabbi. And then later he had aspirations to be the dean of law, which we know he was well on his way. Then July 18th, 2014, so we know that's the day Dan was shot. Ruth was in Montreal, Canada for her uncle Lazar's 97th birthday. And I believe that's where the Holocaust ring came from. Somebody else can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, Dan, I mean, everybody comments on what a father he was. I know even the interviews with Stephen Webster, he talks about that. He says, he gets teared up and he said, Dan taught me to be a better father. And everybody comments on that. So Ruth is in Montreal for her uncle's birthday. And she also reflects back on about a year earlier in June of 2013, Judge Hobbs denied Wendi's request for relocation. So I was kind of curious and I pulled up Judge Hobbs' profile. So I wanted to share that. So Judge Hobbs, pretty lady, is a native of Tallahassee, Florida, and her roots can be traced in the Tallahassee community for 5 generations. The mother of 2 sons, Justin and Alexander, Ms. Hobbs has been active in Second Judicial Circuit as a parent, a community member, and small business owner for most of her life. Ms. Hobbs has been a practicing attorney for 30 years and a member of the Florida Bar since 1982. As a partner with Cummings and Hobbs for 16 years, she has tried over 200 jury trials in state and federal court and practiced law in each of the 6 county courts of the Second Judicial Circuit. So she was elected to the circuit court on November 6, 2012. So she's got a different role because, well, no, wait. Well, what did I say? It was 2013 when that was denied. She went to Florida State Law School, but okay. I just thought We always hear about Judge Hobbs, so I'm like, I wanted to see what she looked like. Mia, yep. In my honest opinion, it was divine intervention that Ruth was not on the phone with Professor Markel when he was shot. She was just beforehand until he had the incoming call from the school. Correct. So Ruth shares that. So Dan had left Premier Fitness and he's on his way home. He calls his mom and then he said, gotta go, because he was getting a call from the gentleman at the charter school where Wendi had signed up Ben to start, and Ben has a July birthday. So that can be young to start kindergarten. I mean, nowadays, my God, kids are so much older. I had a child kind of in that situation. So thank God she wasn't on the phone. Yeah, he was so young. I mean, 41 is so young. Okay, so we've looked at Judge Hobbs. All right, so back to chapter 1. So Ruth is at Uncle Lazar's house and Friday night dinner. So I think his birthday was the next day, or they were celebrating the next day. So it was the Sabbath, Friday night, and their landline rang, the kitchen phone. They could hear it ringing in the kitchen. And she thought that was kind of odd. And so somebody else that was there answered it and said, Ruth, it's Phil. Phil was actually in Colorado at the time. And we've seen Wendy's police interview. And we know she didn't have their number because I guess the police had taken her phone to do the download on it. And they reached Phil, or somebody reached Phil via Facebook. So then Phil tracks down Ruth and calls her at the uncle's house. And she's like, hello. And he said, get a chair and sit down. And she knew something was wrong. And then Phil shares he's been shot. Can you even imagine? Yeah, I would have PTSD. Hey, Rosie, good to see you. Did the guy on the phone call 911? I feel like I don't remember. I kind of feel like he did, but the thing is, he didn't know where Dan was, right? But I think he did, right? But then Mr. Geiger was probably the first to call. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. He said that he heard like a muffled like noise. I think Dan said there's somebody in my driveway or there's somebody here that I don't know. Hang on a minute. Yeah, but Mr. Geiger was the official 911 call, but I believe, yeah, this guy did. I'm sure they've pieced all that together. Okay, so then when Ruth finds this out from Phil on the phone, she goes back into the dinner table and goes to her uncle and says, Maka tunum. Or, excuse me, she says, Dan's been shot. And he took his fist, pounds it on the table, and says, Maka tunum, which means the in-laws. So uncle solved it immediately. Okay. I'm telling y'all, you need to read this, though. It's just like, I feel like I'm not even doing close to justice on this. So then Ruth also reflects back on, so she and Shelly then are traveling. So Phil was in Colorado and he was visiting a friend who was a doctor. And I mean, he told Ruth, he's like, I've shared that Danny's been shot. He's got this brain damage. Essentially, he has a bullet lodged in there. And the only way to remove it is through surgery. And my friend here has said he's not going to make it. They do surgery to take it out. He will be a vegetable. She used those words. So then she's traveling with Shelly to get to Tallahassee. And Shelly's like, we really need to reach out. We got to have a service. But by the time they got to Tallahassee, so many colleagues and friends of Dan's had already had everything in motion. She says there were over 200 people at the service. And it's there's not a ton of like a Jewish population in Tallahassee. So it's not a synagogue in a sense where they have a full-time staff. They have like different people that kind of serve it. So they had like folding chairs and basically sounds like standing room only. So she gets there. She still has not seen Wendi face to face. And Wendi and her parents are in the back of the synagogue. Wendy's holding Lincoln, who was 3 at the time. And then Ben is with the Adelsons in the back. Alex Greenberg spoke. So we remember Alex Greenberg, he and his wife Maya, they did the interview. He's the veterinarian and his wife's the dentist, and they were good friends with Dan. And Dan would often do Friday night dinners with them and the boys and spend the night. Yep, here for today. The uncle absolutely knew. Yeah. Yeah, it was much later when Ruth got the call because we know Dan was shot, like 10:50 a.m. and she was sitting down for dinner. So it was many hours later. Mia Wallace says, Wendi exhibited zero flying fucks about how the Markel family would react to learning about Professor Markel being shot. In my opinion, allegedly, we all watched it with our own eyes in the interview. Yeah. The first thing she said was when she talks about like calling his parents, she's like, they're going to think I did it. She says something like that. Neighbor was the second call. Yeah, the Greenbergs lived in Georgia, so it's just across, like Tallahassee's kind of on the state, it's close to the state line. Oh, yeah, Maestro, you said, I had no idea the uncle was literally shouting it when he heard. Oh, yeah, he knew immediately. Yeah, I know a lot of people like give the Greenbergs a lot of, they say stuff about them, but I really liked them. Ruth also spoke at the service, which she was not planning to do. It was unexpected. She spoke directly to the boys, and I wrote in here the page number. She talked about, she said to the boys, Benjamin and Lincoln, your father loved you both so much, and he wanted more than anything for you to have Jewish roots. Understanding the tradition of Shabbat and holidays and to be close to your family. And then she said she wasn't really prepared, but she's just a well-spoken lady, right? She said that her 5 grandchildren mean everything to her, but when any of them ask them to buy a pretend gun or other toy, she says, no, we don't play with those kind of things. And of course, we know they're Canadian, right? So I don't even believe the police carry guns there. And then after the service, Donna, so Wendy's still avoiding her. She did have to motion to Wendi, like, come up, come up. And I think kind of reluctant, but it sounds like Wendi walked up there holding Lincoln and just stood there while Ruth spoke. And then when Ruth was done, she just then walked to the back of the synagogue. Then afterwards, Donna comes up to Ruth and just says, we'll make sure the boys have roots. Does that not sting? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Kristen, you said that the Greenbergs literally solved the case too. They did. It's a really good police interview if you haven't watched it, because at the very end, he says, is his name Alex Greenberg? He says, it wouldn't surprise me if her dad hired a hitman or if this family hired a hitman because they're rich. Something to that effect. Yeah. Mia says, whether or not Wendi had their phone numbers programmed into her phone at the time of the shooting, she appeared to offer zero assistance to facilitate communication with Dan's family. So true. I mean, she could have called the Greenberg. She could have called a lot of different people and been like, they need to call and tell them about Dan. Juliet, I will never get over what they did. Never. Maestro, you said with the boys coming of age, someone like the uncle will reach out and Wendy's world's going to get wrecked. I think that's already going on. I mean, in my opinion. Kristen says, Maestro, Wendy didn't think things through that the boys would grow up. Imagine looking back on your childhood and realize you were raised by murderers. I know, but I also worry about them thinking, I mean, we caused all this, right? Because all this commotion was going on when they said, Dad, Grandma talks bad about you. She says you're stupid, right? And that's when the motion was that he wanted Donna not to have unsupervised visits with the boys. Marcia, you said it's like how long it was to get Ruth family to tell about Dan. I was thinking during the time Wendy was talking to the police. Why didn't Wendy just give them their phone number? Yeah, she claimed it was in her phone, but I agree. I struggle with all that because I think they could have gotten it quicker. Yeah. Map says, yes, it's Alex. Yeah, we'll have to, the Greenberg interview, I feel like it might be on The Shaming of Jay Bronius. I feel like he had it. Here for today, we all watched the police interview, and Wendy was too busy laying out her alibis and was not concerned about the Markels. Yep. Cheryl, does Ruth indicate in the book that they suspected the Adelsons right from the start? We will get there, not necessarily in these first 2 chapters. My pup listens. Guess to have those roots, those boys will have to visit you in prison. Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Nap. She was wanting to delay it. Kristen, good point. The boys could blame themselves. I blame myself for my parents' divorce, even though I was 2 years old. Of course, that's what like when you get divorced and you take those parenting classes that the court makes you take. I mean, that's one thing they say. The kids are going to blame themselves. I wonder if those roots include visiting Donna and Charlie in prison. Yeah, good point, my pup. All right. But yeah, I just thought Donna saying that was awful. All right. Then Ruth is also talking about the media are now in Canada as well, but she was living in a different place. It wasn't where Dan grew up. And she said they were trying to talk to neighbors about Dan and figure stuff out, but none of those people knew Dan. After the service, so we know Dan was shot on Friday, and then Sunday morning around 1 a.m. he passed. So that was July 19th. Then the service was Sunday, July 20th. So after the service on that Sunday, July 20th, the Markels, they rode with the Tallahassee police. They kept them kind of under their arm just to really help them out. And they went and met with Isom, and he said, does Dan have a will? They went through Dan's house and they couldn't find a will, but they did find some life insurance. And Isom kind of says, hey, we feel like this is about money. We're trying to follow the money. And Ruth says, I don't know, but I have a feeling I think I know where it is, because she had given Dan some paperwork for herself on her previous trip to Tallahassee. And she said, even though things might have appeared out of order, like Dan definitely had a system, and she thought she would know where things were. Then she talks about the pain just going back to Dan's house, what once was, a house with children and a family and lots of that young energy. It just felt so cold and empty. And she just kept thinking, I wish I could feel one of his fingerprints to feel his warmth. And that made me sad. It really upset me. Let's see what else y'all are saying. Gay says, girl, when they divorced, she deleted those phone numbers. This is Wendy, remember? I agree. I said that at first, and then I feel like since I've rewatched that interview so many times, then I thought she said, well, they're in my phone, but I agree. I mean, she was not making it easy. Yeah. Jane for Justice. She told the boys their father was in a box under some dirt. They begged her to dig him out. Poor guys. That was evil. I agree. Oh, Millie, where to watch that? I'll see if I can share it and link it. I'm pretty sure it was on Jay's channel. But I think it's a good watch. They give a lot of insight. Yep, there you go. Kristen linked it. It was on Jay's channel, and there's the link. So there you go. Melissa, you said you read the book a few years ago, went to look for it when I saw you were doing this. Think I loaned it out. It was such a great book. Oh, wait, Maestro, that random lawyer who just wrote a paper about Wendi happens to deal in trusts and estates. Might just be coincidence, but methinks not. You'll have to tell me, who was the lawyer? Which one? Are you talking about the one that Patty shared? Was it somebody last name Schultz or something? Hey, Julia, thanks for joining. Okay. So now we'll go. Okay, so Shelly, Phil, and Ruth are all at Dan's house, right? So again, this is Sunday, July 20th, and they're going through meaningful belongings because Isom was kind of wanting to know about the will, but Ruth just said we didn't really care at that point. We wanted like meaningful things of Dan's. So they went through and packed those items up to take to their hotel. They had not had any one-on-one time with the boys since arriving in Tallahassee on that Saturday. Didn't have the one-on-one time at the service. So they're like, oh, good, we're going to get to see the boys. So she says Wendi lived 15 minutes away, which we know was on Aqua Ridge Way. So they get there, and this is all very interesting. Ruth says there was not much decoration in the house. So let's think back to Donna's trial, and what did Jeff say? Wendi was taking the artwork off the walls, like the kids' artwork. And then Ruth says there were no toys, and I wrote loving room, but living room, no stuffed animals or anything. She said it all appeared very tidy, almost empty. And Donna greeted them, was very friendly, and just seemed normal and full-on hostess mode, which I thought was a great description. I could definitely see that. Lots of neighbors and friends had been delivering meals and sweets, and Donna was making zero effort to keep things kosher, even despite Dan being basically gone. And Donna doesn't care. But can't y'all just imagine, like, now that she's convicted, we can say, I mean, she was just, her plan was happening and she was happy. Okay, you said Wendi scrolled through her phone and said, oh, I don't have the numbers. Yeah, I do remember. But I mean, I'm pretty sure you can Google a number so easily. I mean, she could have gotten a number. Come on. Yes, Maestro says the one Patty showed, it was written by a lawyer dealing in estate disputes. That's right. And she talks about parental alienation and calls out Wendi. Audrey says they say in the womb, mom's DNA combines with the infant in the womb and it stays in your liver for a long time, I believe, even in heaven. Oh, wow. Okay, Kristen says, yes, it was a Wasserman paper, and she's linked it, so y'all can see that. This is an attorney that's written about Wendi. Yeah, the Markel Act. Tater, it should be living room, Leslie, but I doubt that's the case with Wendelina. Mia. Reading Ruth's experience with the Adelson 4 at the memorial service is a textbook study in what consciousness of guilt looks like and how it presents, in my opinion, allegedly. Yeah. Yeah. Ruth has a sort of special grace and mercy because I would have already been raising hell. Yeah, I agree, Tater. I agree. Melissa asks, do you think they planned all along to alienate the boys from the Markels? I do. That's my belief. But to me, if they had just like played it cool and not done all that and just think about it, when you start acting like that, guilty, Yeah, my pup listens. I wonder what the boys think about being kept from their grandparents. I do wonder as well. Okay, so back to so she says that Donna was hostess mode, um, and that she said Harvey was just like kind of awkward and he was meek, gave a meek hello, just kind of seemed lost. And I think from reading that, I've always like envisioned like, oh, maybe he had dementia or something. But no, I think again, I'm thinking consciousness of guilt. In my opinion, we know that he is not been charged, so he is assumed innocent, but he is a named co-conspirator and unindicted. This again was Ruth's first time to get face to face with Wendi. She still hasn't. So it's later in the day on Sunday. She said that Wendi was constantly surrounded by friends all the time. And that Wendi never came up to talk to Ruth, and that she would have friends and then like disappear and be like, psh, 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 talking to them, go into a bedroom to talk with friends so that Ruth could never like get her one-on-one. And then there was a moment where I think they were kind of crossing paths in the home. And she said to her, does Dan have a will? Do you know? And if so, where is it? Or do you know where it is? And she just said no. And Ruth was just kind of in disbelief about everything going on. She said Shelley and Phil, so her daughter and I guess ex-husband, strange husband, whatever he was at the time, sat down and they were coloring with the boys. But Ruth just kind of said she was sitting there in the chair, just like dazed. She said that Harvey again looking lost, and people were like, oh, you can come sit with us. And she said they stayed a few hours, but Ruth really, she never got the one-on-one time she wanted with the boys. And she said to Wendi when they were leaving after a few hours, I'd like to see the boys tomorrow. And Wendi said, agreed, nonchalantly. Well, we all know what happened the next day. Hightailing it to Miami. Then on Monday, Ruth and Phil and Shelley had a full schedule. They went to meet with the Tallahassee PD. Yeah, Tater, exactly. She was avoiding having to look Ruth in the eye. Absolutely. Yeah, Tamara Demko, she went and interviewed with the police as well and said she was so terrified of Harvey and how awkward it was when she went by the house on Saturday that she went and bought a gun. That's right. Yep, and Tamara Demko said she moved to another state. That's right. Yeah. So Ruth and Phil and Shelley go to the Tallahassee Police Department, and I did feel bad because I know I've said a lot of stuff about Sarah Latour. I just am not a Sarah Latour fan. I think she was just very, very young for this. But she testified for the defense in Donna's trial, just saying that she felt like Donna sounded surprised. I mean, I don't think that's just how she genuinely felt at the time. But Ruth praises Sarah and Isom and said they were beyond helpful. And she just is very grateful. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I just hit. Hold on. I accidentally hit back. They also had meetings at FSU. She said FSU, they were beyond gracious. They had lined up things just to review Dan's 401k, all those benefits and things that he would have. So then Ruth reaches out to Wendi and she says, is it still okay that we can come see the boys at 1:00 today? And Wendi says, no, the boys are busy. So Ruth's like, no, not 1 p.m. And she said, not today, Ruth. So I think things were getting suspicious. Yeah, so many lives just disrupted. I agree, Jane. Gay says, Tamara Demko is my hero. Yeah. All right. So then when Wendi said, no, not today, the boys are too busy. I mean, what could they be so busy doing? They were 3 and 4. So she says tomorrow, and Wendi says, yes, we'll speak in the morning. Well, Shelley was furious. All right. And Shelley is an attorney, by the way, as well. So Ruth says, when I got off the phone, my daughter Shelley was furious enough for the three of us. What the hell? Unbelievable. She said angrily, these boys are just babies. What could they be doing at 12 o'clock in the afternoon? What could be so important? So then Ruth, Phil, and Shelley are going through items at Dan's. They're packing toys and all these things. They're thinking, we'll take these to Wendy's because, her house looked very empty. So then it's the next day. And so it's Monday, and Ruth calls Wendi and she says, no, you can't see them. And Wendi says, I was so worried about their safety and mine. We left the house and drove back to Miami right after we saw you, which isn't true because, it was Monday. They saw each other Sunday night. Can you imagine? And Ruth references and she says, how could they have packed so fast? Did they know this would happen? And she just reflects on, in an instant, her life had completely and irrevocably changed. Not only was there the horror of outliving a son, I'd also fallen down a rabbit hole from which I would never emerge. So the two people remaining alive that are part Dan, she can't even get to. And Ruth says nobody knew that they had gone to Miami. And she felt very deceived. And she said, that is why Wendi wouldn't be alone with me. She was in disbelief and shock. Audrey says, I can't believe she's running the streets. That in itself. Yeah, I know. Melissa, I don't agree regarding not making eye contact with Ruth. She didn't give a shit. I think Wendi hated the Markels as much. She hated Dan. But we also know she says she has an aversion to conflict or something that along those lines. John, you said sometimes I think Sarah doesn't get all the credit she deserves. The one thing I will say that I think Sarah did is when Jane comes in there and then Wendi goes to the bathroom or something and Jane's like on the phone gossiping with someone. She's like, oh my God, I'm at the police station. Dan has been shot. Don't tell anyone. And Sarah was in the room and you see Sarah over there texting. And within, it's not even a minute, Isom swoops in there and said, hey, you got to go. You need to go. So she did do that. Oh yeah, I was going to show y'all. Well, no, I haven't gotten to that yet. I was getting ahead of myself. All right. So Ruth said she was in disbelief and shock. And then she said there was so much they had to do. They had to arrange transport, and it's not super easy to arrange the transport of Dan, who's passed, to get back to Canada. So you got to get him out of the country. And she said, all of a sudden, I became an expert in murder and crime. She also talks about how she had to bring Shelley's children in Toronto to experience a family death, funeral, and burial at their young ages of 8, 11, and 14. Cemetery visits would become a part of their life, as had been the case for me. Turbulent times had just started. It was only the beginning. All right. So on to chapter 2. Is there anything else I've missed on anything? Maestro. Yeah, Nap. I would have been unglued too. I would have been in Isom's face saying, are you freaking kidding me? Come on, Armand. She was packing up. Yeah, I agree. It's my opinion. Oh, let me put my disclaimer up on my banner. Yeah, the Hitman layaway plan. Nap, you said confrontation is not her strong suit, per Wendi on the stand. Mia, since the murder has been solved and according to Wendi herself under oath, the guilty people are in prison, why hasn't Wendi restored Dan's son's last name? It's a good question. Yeah. So Dan is buried, I don't want to mispronounce this, Pardes Shalom Cemetery in Maple, Ontario. Ruth reflects. So, like I said, we're in chapter 2 now. She said, you would never expect or experience anything normal again. She never dreamed she'd be barred from seeing her grandchildren. So, I also want to show she does an awesome like family chart of the Adelsons and the Markels, and she does a timeline. She shows when Dan was shot, when he died. So he died on July 19th, and then his funeral in Toronto was July 24th. And then Uncle Lazar died about 3 months later. The grief, he just couldn't handle it. And then the unveiling was in Toronto, April 26th. Oh my gosh, that's 11 years ago today. Well, that didn't give you goosebumps. Okay. I didn't even know that. All right. Dan's unveiling in Toronto. Okay. I didn't know that when we planned this. I love stuff like that. Kristen says, Ruth said in the book, Danny would have been helpful in solving a mystery like this of his own murder, and he didn't believe in the death penalty. That's right. I mean, how ironic. He was a criminal justice professor. Juliet, Wendi is dangerously passive aggressive. She has an aversion to direct conflict, but does her deadly deeds behind people's backs. Isn't her degree in like conflict resolution or something? That's never made sense to me. Mia, direct confrontation may not be her strong suit, but she is fascinatingly soulful at putting others to do her confronting and engaging confrontation on her behalf, allegedly, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, she was so worried that the Markel name would put a target on her boys. Imagine now, you Google the Adelsons. Okay. So then she says on page 31, let me get to this. And she's got a lot of pictures and things of Dan in the book. So again, I highly recommend it. She talks about how she tossed the first shovel of earth onto his coffin on July 24th, 2014. So y'all have probably seen that video I've made. I should show that actually. Give me a second. I went to a Jewish funeral burial earlier this year, and I did not realize that they gave you a shovel and you can put the dirt on there. So in my faith, Christian faith, and they'll have that sometimes at the burials, or they'll have dirt and people can throw it on, but it's not really as much of a part of the ritual, I guess I would say. So I want to show this video that I made. So I went to my first ever Jewish burial. It was in January of this year. And when I saw the dirt on the shovel and how they do 3 scoops and they turn the shovel upside down, it made me want to make this.
Where was Dan Markel buried?
In Toronto.
Were you or your children in attendance at his funeral?
No. I wasn't concerned about the roadblock. They don't have him in their lives day to day, no.
And did you change your children's names after Dan Markel was killed?
About a year after I did.
In what way did you change their names?
I changed their last name and I changed my older son's middle name.
And you changed their last name from Markel to what?
To mine.
Adelson.
Mhm.
Was Mr. Markel scheduled to leave town the day after he was killed?
I don't remember if he was scheduled to leave town on Friday afternoon or on Saturday morning.
I actually spoke to Wendi and I asked her if we can arrange for the boys, you included, to come to Toronto, let them see where their father grew up, let them see where he's buried. And she said that'll never happen.
Did you have WhatsApp on your phone at that time?
I did. I was trying to turn down Trescott. That's where I used to turn and take just the road I was used to. But there was yellow tape up. And so when I tried to turn, I couldn't turn. So I made a 3-point turn and kept going on Centerville.
But you mentioned 9 times in your law enforcement interview being a suspect, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Did you talk to your brother Charlie on the morning of the murder?
I did.
And does an 18-minute conversation at 9:30 a.m. that day sound correct?
It does. I did not know it was going to happen, and I did not know any details.
Did you provide any information, even unknowingly in hindsight, that you think could have been used to assist the murderers?
I don't think so.
Someone did hire a hitman who did kill Dan Markel, right?
Yes, that happened.
Did Mr. Markel leave you a message on the morning of his murder?
He did.
Okay. And did he indicate on that message that he was going to the gym that morning?
He did.
And specifically, did it tell you he'd be at the gym between 9:15 and 10:30?
I don't remember, but that sounds about right.
Can you tell the jury one way or the other for sure whether you mentioned Dan Markel's travel plans to Charlie during that 18-minute phone call?
I can't say for sure, but I don't see why I would have brought it up. Anyone who's responsible.
I actually spoke to Wendi and I asked her if we can arrange for the boys, you included, to come to Toronto, let them see where their father grew up, let them see where he's buried. And she said that'll never happen.
Yeah, she said that'll never happen. Mia was talking about the middle name. She said, to my knowledge, Wendi has never given the reason why she removed her son's middle name. Do any of you know about that aside? No, I mean, I can tell you what I think. So she says his middle name started, right, in the Jewish faith, you don't name people after living relatives. So if you have like a passed away relative, let's say, okay, Leslie's passed, so then we're going to use an L. You give an L name. So it was something that started with an A, and my understanding is it was somebody on Ruth's side of the family. But then she said it was also an honor to her family, and they both lost an honor that day. But to my knowledge, she's never given a reason. But I think she definitely had a issue with Ruth. Juliet says, special place in hell for her. Yeah. Yeah. That video made you cry. I know, here for day. I was like sobbing when I made that. Yeah, Mia, just wondering if she ever gave a reason. I've never heard it. Kristen, is Morgan being paid to be her friend? Is it supply? Wouldn't she advise her, hey, don't do anything to make you look guilty? I don't know. I don't even really understand what their friendship is, or does it go back to Brandeis? I really, Juliet, you're mad Georgia didn't press her on the logic on changing the name. Right, but it all has to do with the immunity, right? Florida Gulf Coast. Hello. I believe Wendy's very nervous. Interesting timing of her attorney's letter and the cyberbully vigilante. Yeah. Jackie said that the cyber person that's got me all over, it's like obsessed, that their name is Ashton. And so she thought it was a guy, but I know a girl, Ashton. I have no idea who it is. I'm glad y'all enjoyed the video. Thank you. Thanks, Millie. Oh, thanks, Maestro. Melissa says no. Ashkenazi Jews name after dead. Sephardic Jews name after the living. Thank you. See, once again, I'm just, yeah. Marcia, poignant. Wendi was the one who benefited, yet she's the one walking the streets. Yeah, I know. Melissa, yeah, if I was the Markels, I'd be calling Campbell every day. I agree. And I've been saying, like, we don't need to email him because this isn't a cold case. He's got pressure. But I'm kind of to the point now, like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm pissed. All right. Back to the PowerPoint. All right, chapter 2, Danny and Wendi. All right, so she writes in the book. So this book was like, I'm going to tell my side of the story at this point. She says, you might as well know this now. I have been barred from seeing my grandchildren. My son has been killed, and I have not seen Benjamin and Lincoln in more than 5 years. The walking, talking evidence that Dan lived on this earth, the people who he made. So, yeah. So that she had not seen them since April of 2016 because of the quote foster care situation. And it wasn't just Ruth, right? So Phil, Shelly, all the cousins, Shelly's husband, Ian, none of them. So those boys, they lost their dad. They lost Jeff Lacoste, who they were close with. They lost their whole paternal side of the family. I mean, imagine all of a sudden not seeing your cousins. I don't know about y'all, but like I have good memories with my cousins and stuff growing up. She also says, my life as a grandmother, this is the beginning of chapter 2, was yanked away from me despite my unrelenting efforts to maintain connections with them. Then Ruth says at the bottom of page 32, part of my job with this book is to put the picture back together, to claim what is right, to claim my rights as the mother of a slain son and what is right for Dan. She also talks about how Dan, we know he was super smart and he had his eyes set on Harvard years before he went. But at 18 years old, he graduates high school and he leaves for Harvard and he never moved back home. He had jobs and everything all over in other countries. Yeah, he lived all over the world. She talks about he traveled and lived in many cities, including Montreal, Toronto, Boston, London, Jerusalem, New York, Phoenix, San Francisco, Miami, Tallahassee, and Washington, D.C. And then we know he was living in D.C. when he met Wendi on JDate, the dating Jewish app. Then he joined Florida State University at the law school there as a professor in 2005, and he was already tenured by 2009. That is not typical. They wanted to do whatever they could to keep him. And Donna was furious. She was not happy that Dan had left that big law firm that he was with in DC and chose to go into academics. And then also Ruth reflects on their wedding day or their wedding, weekend. And she says that Thursday night before the wedding, Dan came to see his parents at the hotel or condo or whatever they were renting and said, "Hey, this weekend, please don't mention that I went to Harvard. That it makes Wendi uncomfortable." Melissa, that's a great point. And now, so the boys lost their paternal side when Dan was killed, but now they've lost their maternal side. Donna was their mother. How can these boys not be curious? Mm-hmm. Mr. C says there are 4 questions on J-Date. I can't wait. There's so many good comments, and I'm sorry I can't get to them all. And she said that she feels like Dan probably had that conversation about, hey, don't bring up Harvard. Because maybe it's later in the book. I've read somewhere, I think that Wendi says she got into Harvard as well, but chose not to go there. But she said there were very few toasts about Dan, like the wedding weekend. It seemed to be all about Wendi. Then in 2009 and 2010, both the boys, they were born. And she talks about Dan, just what a great father he was, that anytime he was in the car with the boys, he always made sure that he was playing music for the boys. And we know earlier he wouldn't talk on the phone when the boys were there because he wanted to give them the best, undivided attention he could. Then Ruth also talks about on page 34, some of the early indicators of problems within the marriage had to do with Judaism. Wendi and Dan came from different Jewish backgrounds. So Wendi is what they call Reform, and Dan was more observant. And he was even more observant than his parents. So Dan and Wendi both were vegetarians, she said, until the boys were born, and that Harvey and Donna were very disruptive. And Donna was super irritated that Dan was more strict with the dietary laws than even Dan's own parents. Again, she's not a murderer, she's a meddler, or whatever they said. And then the number 2 big issue was Tallahassee. That Wendi really disliked it. In Dan's career, he was moving up, and Wendi felt stuck, which we've heard in all the trials. Ruth urges her to hire help, or urges Dan, I should say, to hire help, because apparently it was like a struggle for Wendi to keep up the house and the kids and to still have a job. And so Ruth's like, Dan, why don't y'all hire a housekeeper and get somebody to help out with some things? But I think she was saying like Wendi didn't want to do that because her mom managed everything. So she didn't want to look like she was failing. Then Ruth talks about in 2011, Wendi published This Is Our Story. And the main character was Lily, and Lily felt stuck. Also, she said that Wendi said Dan never read her book, but he did read it, and he even promoted it, which we've heard that he was attributed to getting that to the Florida State, whatever, all school read. Sorry, I'm kind of behind in the chat. Let me see what people are saying. Yeah, Gay says, I wish Donna would have testified. Georgia would have torn her apart. Can you imagine? Sorry, I'm way behind. Okay, Mr. C says the 4 questions they ask on J-Date about yourself, previous relationship, what are you looking for? I forgot the 4th question. Passovers. Passover. Jane is one of the questions. Are you kosher or kosher style? Mr. C said he was on J-Date many years ago. What is a red carpet Jew? That's what Mr. C says. Skier, good to see you. You wonder how much of Wendy's career was thanks to her parents' influence and connection. Yeah, it's a great point. 4 of 6. Poor Lily, aka Wendy. I know I haven't read this book yet, her book. I'm gonna do it eventually. Oh, red carpet Jew. Someone who is Jewish when convenient. Okay, that makes sense. Kristen said, Ruth said in the book that Donna, even at the memorial at Wendy's house, was not keeping kosher. That's right. Yeah. All right. So Dan was traveling a lot, right? Because his career was on the up and up and he was going to Israel and things like that. Donna would come, of course, to help Wendy in Tallahassee, and she would feed the boys pork while Dan was away. We've also heard that when they were on Skype, this was after the divorce, they would have the boys eat bacon in front of Dan. So I'd always heard, or I thought, that the therapy was never validated or verified, but Ruth does talk about it, that they started therapy. And Dan told his mom that ever since starting therapy, that it seemed like Wendy withdrew even more from the marriage, which I thought was kind of interesting. And Ruth talks about in 2012, you could even feel the coldness around them. Like you could just tell things were not good. Then towards the end, they went to visit the Markels in Canada. And Wendy had to go to New York for the day for an interview. But she says, Wendy said she had to go to New York to apply for a Human Rights Watch interview, which should have taken one day. But while in New York, Wendy decided to take a few extra days to stay and visit a very close female friend whom she often confided in. Dan, who saw some writing on the wall, became quite upset and took more private time than usual at our vacation home in Ontario. Then she talks about, then it came out in trial later on that it was around this time where the emails came out when Donna had said, you can be a good actress. So that's kind of interesting. Ruth also talks about the night that Dan got the call that Wendy was divorcing and leaving him. He canceled his speech in New York, got on a plane to get home as quick as he could, and he was on the phone with his mom as he walked through the house, which he calls Pearl Harbor. And the boys' rooms, she says, were totally empty, which is not what Wendy said in court. So I've pulled that. I thought we could watch that.
He was very upset, yes.
And he was heartbroken. I mean, upset indicates that there was anger. What he was heartbroken, right?
That I decided to divorce him after telling him I would, yes.
Despite being at NYU for a presentation, he rushes home. He gets on the next flight, right?
I honestly don't remember if he got on the next flight, but he did come home quickly.
2:30, he finds out in New York. By 11 p.m., he's walking in the door to your old house at Trescott Drive, right?
I don't know.
But you do know that when he walks in the house, what he finds. You know that, right?
Yes, I left him the papers.
You left the divorce papers on the bed, right?
Yes.
Half the furniture was gone.
Half the furniture was not gone.
A good amount of his stuff was gone.
Nothing of his was gone.
The boys' stuff was gone, right?
Some of the boys' things were gone. I'd taken enough so that I had for the boys, but no.
Okay. So right there, she says some of the stuff was gone. But right here in Ruth's book, she says that she was on the phone with Dan and it was completely empty. Then Dan thought, I better check my bank accounts. He checked, and half of all of his accounts was gone, which we know, we've heard about. And it was for 2 weeks. Wendy refused to tell where the boys were. Then it's around this time too, Dan hears that Donna is talking bad about him. And that's it for sure. That's it. So then we'll do chapter 3. I mean, there's so much more, but I guess at that point too, when she wouldn't tell where the boys were, at that point then he took it to court and they had 50-50 custody. But Ruth goes into all the detail about the assets and the support. So you just have to read it. So then next week is chapter 3, which is grief. Let me see. Chapter 3 is grief, and chapter 4 is the arrests. So that is what we're going to discuss. Oh, Audrey, Wendi was cheating on him. You think that's who she was with in New York? Yeah, and she moves away from Miami. Hey, Carrie, good to see you. So I hope this has helped and maybe incentivize some of y'all to go get her book. I ordered mine on Amazon, but I know a lot of people have done the audiobook. This one, I really wanted the paper. Yeah, quite a difference between two mothers. Isn't that the truth, Sean? Polar opposites. I know, I worry about Ruth. Yes, 4 of 6. Ruth's writing is so readable. She also did an interview. I like to watch this on the Canadian Jewish News. So this was 3 years ago. So I'll play this. But she talks about her book.
This is Ruth Markel. Welcome to the CJN Daily.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm so pleased to be able to talk to you, CJN. I have a long history, positive history, with the Community Jewish News, Canadian Jewish News. I worked in Montreal. I was Director of Program Management at Jewish Family Services Social Service Center. We had lots of programs, and of course, you were always there covering it. And later on, I moved to Toronto, and we had a lot of nice coverage on some of the difficult issues, such as emergency preparedness, which I worked with in the hospitals and Jewish organizations. So I am really delighted to be here, and I'm even more delighted because this has been an American story, and I would love the Canadian audience, and particularly the Jewish audience, to know about my book.
Well, I'll jump right in. Why do you think that it's not been so covered well by Canadian media as opposed to blanket coverage in the States? What do you think is the reason?
It's a really different, and it's not even a complicated answer. First of all, the book is called The Unveiling, and it's a mother's reflection on murder, grief, and the trial life. And my son, Dan Markel, was born in Montreal, grew up in Toronto, but left at 17, 18 to go to Harvard. And he never came back. So he went to Harvard undergrad, went to Harvard Law School, went to England, went to Israel. A lot of nice things, brought me our family lots of nachas, as they say. And he became very internationally acclaimed in the States in 2 ways: as a legal scholar, and more specifically, that he started something called Prof's Blog, which was for young professors and young law students. So he had a whole international profile, and he was followed by lots of places. To me, I love him as the father of my grandchildren and so on. But the point is that most of the people who he knew really were from the American community, particularly the American legal community and Jewish community.
I want to ask you about the book because I know that it's just starting to come out in terms of your media appearances, pre-orders, what have you. But I want to ask you about the writing process for the book. Can you sort of tell us just the mechanics of when you started, how the idea came, and how long it took you?
I actually started very early. I probably in my own world of initial grief, I didn't start to write a book. I started to basically keep a chronological list of events. And that actually really helped me later on, which was a few years later, where I started to really write, as I call it. But the first stage was just so much was happening so quickly. We were overwhelmed. Murder's not even a word in my vocabulary. And it was totally covered all over the world. And so that was sort of my initial thing was just to start and to keep this record of what was happening, when it was happening, what was I feeling a little bit at the time. I did put some personal comments into these episodes of experience. And later, much later, it was actually before the pandemic, which is funny because this book was written during the pandemic, which was excellent for me because I'm always looking for projects. But I actually knew I was writing this book in early 2019, not the end. And then after the trials, which occurred in September 2019, I went to New York and I knew now I'm writing, getting, a publisher and an agent and the whole business. And that's how I started. So I really wrote the real story. And it's a long story and a personal story during the pandemic.
So about this writing of the book, what do you hope people will see the purpose of the book is when they get it? Why do this?
The book is called, and I'm going to go with the title first. The title explains everything. The title is called The Unveiling. And the reason I chose that title is it's for twofold. This is the initial part of the book is about grief. And one of the things that in my personal experience was at the very beginning, I was sad. I was in a daze. I was in an out of body experience at a certain point. It was hard. But it was only when I started to actually, after we selected the monument and start to go to the gravesite and see the monument and covered it, as the Jewish tradition is you have basically a piece of fabric which covers the monument. It was at that point that it just hit me like I could have collapsed and gone underground myself. And that the reason why I chose the title, it's the beginning of my grief journey. I won't tell you that before I was playing because I wasn't, but this was different. The deepening, the impact and so forth of actually seeing the monument on the gravesite. And we talk about that even in the Jewish religion, the finality of it, right? This is what's really the effect. So that was one reason. And the other reason is nothing to do with me personally, but I want to lift the curtain on homicide victims and others suffering from violence and so forth. And that's what the book is about. One of the things that crime stories, whether it's on TV, my own story, Dan's story, it has a lot of glamour, a lot of sensationalism. There's, fast cars, there's all kinds of arrests, there's anything you want to find in this story, even things like Peyton Place, who has relationships with who and so forth, is there in the real story. But what is not in the real story at all, and all of the people who are suffering now, is what is it like to be a homicide victim? What does it feel like? What is the family going through? And this is now not only, for crime victims, the mass shootings in the States. I mean, we're living in an era, and a million people died in the States from the pandemic. I don't know the exact statistics in Canada, but they're not small either. So a lot of families are suffering, and they're really suffering. So for me, the whole point was, let's talk about what is it like to be behind the scenes. And the other reason I wrote it is about the trial life. And that trial life, when as soon as something happens, I mean, we had in Canada the issue with the planes going down. There's investigations. You start to have to be involved in a very intense court system that you don't have the experience with. You don't have, the language of crime is a whole new vocabulary. And so this is the purpose of the book.
And so you said that, or some people have said that, you have lots of experience in terms of social work and dealing with your professional training, and then married to this whole grief journey. Would you say now that you're on the other side of the writing and that the book is about to launch, that it's been helpful to you and your family to have gone through this writing process?
I think that the grief process continues. And there's the founder of Mothers Against Drunk Driving has the best expression. I think her name, I believe, I have to look it up again, is Candace Lighton, I believe. But that's not the point. How she defines grief: there's a beginning, a middle, and the rest of your life. So the rest of your life with grief is, the book doesn't end the grief. The book is a way of finding some meaning and then continuing on with the lifestyle. Yet now our lifestyle is simple because it's a conspiracy murder with a lot of arrests. So we're going back to trials continuously. And so the life is a roller coaster, and you're always going in and out of having hearings and so forth. In fact, one is coming up June 29th. So this is not going to alleviate the grief. What it allows the book to do for me and others is it helps find meaning. And then it helps you as having sort of what I would call a way out of just not living through the most difficult moments.
I'm aware that you were able to see your American grandchildren earlier this year. Can you describe how that went? And yeah, because I'm sure people would want to know after that long separation.
Well, I think people may not be aware there was a long separation, so maybe I'll just go back.
Right.
The first 2 years in 2014, when Dan was murdered, I don't like using the word, but it's the fact. And we saw the children, so what I would call Benjamin and Lincoln, Dan's boys, for 2 years.
So I was just thinking, so the visits stopped in April 2016 for 5 years. In April of 2016 is when the bump happened. On the phone call, and Charlie's like, "Do you know who sent it to you?" And Donna says, "No, but I have a general idea of who I think it is." Who do y'all think she was thinking it was? Did she think it was the Markels? Or was she thinking it was law enforcement? And by the way, this interview right now is 2022.
And then after there were some arrests in Florida, and Garcia, Rivera, and then later on Catherine McManua were in jail. So the situation changed dramatically, and we were cut off in 2015. So that was 2016. In 2015, Wendi, Dan's ex, and my ex, the daughter-in-law, actually changed the names from Markel to Adelsons. So there was a whole 6-year period which we never saw the grandchildren, and that became the hardest thing.
It really is so telling. Change the name, stop the visits. I mean, come on.
For me, it was difficult to lose Dan, but here you have living children, right? Living family members, and important ones, that you were cut off from, and that was exceptionally sad. So what happened was this last, over 3 years, I shouldn't say just last year, after the trial in Tallahassee in 2019, it was my birthday, but I went to, I call myself a joke, but a hairdresser junkie, as I would describe it. And I went to this hairdresser, and this young woman comes over to me. She says, "Can I give you a hug?" And I said, sure, because I knew where I was already all over the media for the last few days and so forth. And I said, sure. So she says, what can I do for you? And I said, grandparent alienation. So she says, done. Now I had sat on this, and I do want to talk about this message. When any grieving parent or any person has lost somebody, you think in your mind, you asked me before, how do you memorialize the person? What do you want to do? And every parent, every family member, even friends, really good friends, have always done things to help create a memory for that person. And somebody told me 3 years, so this is 2016, I only, would use the Jewish expression, moved my tuchus until 2019, because I sat on it. Our American lawyer told me that I have to write a bill. How do I write a bill? I'm sitting in Canada, I'm gonna write a bill in Florida. And then all my other friends sort of mentored me and said, now's the time, you better think about it. And they volunteered different aspects, but you're gonna need lobbyists. So here I am, I sat on it for 3 years. And why I wanna mention this is there's a lot of other families who wanna do something. They know what they wanna do. This is the important piece of this message. They know what they wanna do, but things hold you back. In my case, it was a whole trial. There was a whole crime journey. And then all of a sudden I was ready. And so what happened was, just lucked in, this person, her name was Karen Halpern. She happened to know very well the whole government system. And this is October where I met her. In January, we had a bill that was first passed in the Senate. And it didn't go to the House at that time, to the House of Representatives. There was not enough time. In 2021, we did a workshop, but in 2022, we were successful. So it passed the Senate and unanimously in Florida. And then it passed the House of Representatives. And it was just signed now, June 24th, by Governor DeSantis. So we're elated, because this is a real important piece of legislation which allows grandparents under certain circumstances, if the spouse was involved in anything civilly or criminally, where you go to court and it's understood that you're going to get visitation rights. So this is, you can't ask for more. And this has been really a phenomenal experience and what you call a success feeling.
Right, but backdate a couple of months, you were invited to see them for the first time in person, and you went.
Yes.
That's the first time in a long time. How did that go? What did you do on the visit?
Well,
you can say.
Yeah. So what happened actually? In February of 2022, we were actually supposed to have a Catherine McManaway's trial. The trial was then changed to May 16th. And we suddenly got a note from Wendi advising us that there is a bar mitzvah coming up in May. And it was very similar and very timely to the new trial, but at the same time, very timely to the fact that legislation had just passed in both the House and the Senate. So what happened was she invited us to the bar mitzvah. We said, we want to go, we're excited. And then I said to her, can we see the boys? We hadn't seen them for 6 years, for ice cream on the day before. So she said, if you want an in-person visit, come in April. And we did. We went on the plane early in the morning, and we saw the children. They're not children anymore. They're big boys. And it was amazing. And that was, the best experience that we could have. And that was on April 20th of 2022. I'm giving the dates because we come back to Toronto. Phil and I went, and we come back, and the next morning, 6 a.m. in the morning, Charlie Adelson was arrested. So that's her brother. So wow, like 24 hours, two big breakthroughs in this whole story, one on the criminal side and one on the grandparents' side. So that was our experience.
It was from the high to the low, though, because now you can't see them for the bar mitzvah, I heard. Is that right?
Right, that's correct. Yeah,
but are you able to email them, FaceTime them, or no?
Well, we're gonna try. We have to keep this door open. This is my mantra right now. I did ask I wanted Shelley's children, that's my Canadian grandchildren. At this age, if everybody has at least a picture of their faces, so they zoomed. They did a Zoom just recently, which is fabulous. So I'm hoping to keep this door open. It's a tough door to keep open, but we have to keep trying.
Now, you mentioned a lot of things about, cost to you health-wise as well as emotionally and things. But in terms of the actual, 8 years of being involved in the trial life, this must have been enormously costly financially for your family to go to Florida, come back, hire lawyers and all this stuff, right?
Hey, Margaret Lee. Nice comment. Time-wise, April 2016, visits stopped. Wendi blames it on a phone call or email sent by Georgia Kappelman regarding Ruth's worries and, quote, Jewish orphanage in the event of Wendi's arrest. Was Georgia performing a bump on Wendi? Food for thought.
Can you speak to that aspect, which maybe victims' families aren't aware of, that it's going to cost them too if they want to be involved?
There are different things. I will say a little bit, and I don't know about it in other states, but there's something that Florida does have initially, not where we are now, but there are two things. There are some victims' rights, and there are some victims' compensation in the very initial stages. So when after, let's say, the murder, there's some victims' compensation that has to go towards a funeral. Okay, so that's a very early, let's call it, contribution. In this case, I think you know, so we don't pay the prosecutor. We have a lot of other costs, but we do not pay the prosecutors because they manage the whole criminal journey and the whole case. But there are many costs. There's costs, of course, travel and other things, and even if there's some victim, small grants, they're minimal. But the idea being that the big pieces of the legal case are covered. We have a lot of very, very, magnificent support, I will call it, coming originally from some of Dan's friends and some of the large law firms who liaison with us. Some of it is pro bono, some of it's not. But the point I'm making is there's a lot of interest in this case, and there is a lot of support, but there's a lot of expenses. And I think
Kristen, you're hysterical. We are performing a virtual bump by talking about this case. It's making Wendi react. Yeah, we're bumping every day over here. Okay, we are bumping. Well said.
To me, the physical expenses are much more than the actual, monetary expenses.
There's been a lot of sort of internet sleuths, internet supporters, I don't know, Reddit, all these true crime people that you probably never even thought that you would even have a clue about this before this murder happened, right? It was not something you were familiar with. But how important have they been to you and your family throughout this process?
I think they are very supportive, but I'm going to back off here a little bit and say how it works. So I don't follow them directly, but I would tell you that Phil, Shelley, and all of us have networks of friends. And some of our friends are more entangled, or you want to call it obsessed, or whatever word you want to use, in following this, right? And they follow all of whether it's web sleuths, Reddit, it doesn't matter what, and a lot of other people who we know too, like will send something in. And so indirectly, I do follow it. And there have been, for the most part, it's never been critical to us. There are a couple comments, here and there about certain things we should be doing, but it's mostly quite supportive.
Mia says the kosher style disrespect and desecration to everyone at the wedding who kept kosher was the first Pearl Harbor. There were clearly a lot of problems way before the wedding. Yep. I have a friend, she's Jewish, and she's always like, what's going on with your case? And I was like, can I just ask you about kosher style? And she was like, what? And I explained it, and she said, "Leslie, that's a bunch of bullshit." She said, "That's just like somebody trying to be PC or not PC." I don't know what she said, but she was like, basically, it's a bunch of BS.
And occasionally there's some, not Canadian friends, but some people, like there's somebody in New Zealand, there's somebody elsewhere, they become obsessed with the case, like, and they follow it, and they do some very intense, and I will call it forensic investigation. This becomes passed on to me, and on a few occasions, I actually passed it on to the FBI to show you. So there are some valuable.
Yeah, I agree, Mia. Can you imagine being instructed not to discuss where your son or daughter attended a university because it would upset their spouse? Yeah, and it's Harvard. That to me, I would have been like, son, do we need to be marrying her?
Insights coming out of other people's forensic interest in this whole story.
So you've started with the media interviews in the States about the book. What's the reception been so far from these reviews?
It's outstanding. Well, we've had support before. Dateline NBC is coming. I'm speaking to them, in fact, this afternoon. They're coming to Toronto next week, 2 weeks from now, to tape another session. This is their third session. I don't know if it'll be 2 hours, but I think it will be. They have done it before. And so you don't ask for much better than that, right? In terms of, and we had a phenomenally successful podcast, which I didn't have anything to do with it in terms of design, but it's Over My Dead Body by Wondery. I think it's already, I say 10 million. Somebody told me the other day there's been more than 20 million listeners, but I know I think I'm up to 10 million. And that particular podcast was just bought out by Apple TV. So Apple TV is not so much buying the podcast as much as the sessions. The 8 sessions from the Over My Dead Body will be on TV. My experience so far, because we just pre-announced it a few weeks ago, not even a few weeks ago, has been excellent. So the Tallahassee community, which is, my groundstone, right? Excuse me, has already, I've been on ABC.
I wish that Over My Dead Body podcast, which is excellent, but I wish they would do an updated one. It would be amazing.
Tallahassee TV, NBC, a few others. Tomorrow I have another program. So the support from the initial publicity for really at this stage to pre-order the book is really great.
So the end of July, you mentioned earlier, but it's all in the news. There's 2 big court things happening, right? There's the sentencing for Katie and the first court appearance for the brother. Are you going? Are you invited? Do you get to go?
We can go, but we are doing it. The judge has initiated a Zoom, which we've done for a few of the sessions. So this particular hearing, no, we're not going in person, but we are participating in 2 parts. One is the Zoom aspect, and the other part is it's sentencing like this is where they do victim impact statements. So this is an opportunity.
Melissa, you said, I'm surprised no one has made this murder into a movie or documentary. Yeah, it's going on right now. Hulu is doing it, and people are being interviewed, etc.
For us, and for Danny had a lot of friends the last time who have submitted victim impact statements. So the previous judge, because this is a new judge, had a sizable amount of paper that he had to read. But the family are the ones that, in general, it doesn't have to be the family ones that actually are kind of, let's call it read out loud, or someone from the family, and the others are given to the judge as part of the sentencing.
Have you written it yet?
I've written it before, and I have to make some changes to it, but it's, yes.
I've seen you give it to them. What did the children, what did Ben and Lincoln know, if anything, about this whole story? Since they're living with the family that's suspected of doing the murder? Do they know anything?
They have been protected, let's call it, and shielded in some ways, not to be overexposed. But I don't have a real good sort of knowledge of what they know and they don't know.
Is there any possibility or any dream that you will get custody of those kids?
There's certain criteria. It isn't our intention to get custody. It is also.
Hey, Juliet, I think that this Hulu thing is with Lionsgate. That's my understanding. Because, maybe talk to people.
A process that we would not have any control over. This is all now would be through the Florida courts if there were situations that the courts felt that anything could be possible. But this is not where we want to be. We want the children to have as much of a normal life as they can have, and I'm most worried about their long-term mental health, which is a real worry, versus custody kinds of issues, which are not on my mind right now.
Is there anything that you would like to add about the fact that we're talking about the book here in Canada? Anything you want our audience to know?
Well, I do want the audience really to know that this is a story. It's a terrible story, horrendous story, but you can move from what I call grief to promise. There is hope, there is resilience, and the important part is to.
Well, I can tell you this: if she thinks she gets a lot of pressure now from YouTubers and is upset, and a documentary hits on Hulu, I don't think someone's going to be very happy, and it might be why somebody wants to really change their looks.
Some point, define yourself again and find meaning, which is what I did through the advocacy work with the grandparent legislation. So, and other families have things on their mind, or it's just a question of, finding your place again along another kind of journey. Not to say that the grief is going away. And that's the important point here. You acknowledge the grief, but then there's a real important time. And I don't like the words move on, and I don't like any of those kinds of words because they are not the ones that you should be choosing, but it's an internal sort of discussion with yourself. And that's an important one to decide how you might want to redefine yourself, how you might want to go from grief to promise to something else. It can be done. That's the message.
Well, it's not over yet for you at all. As you said, it's a trial life, as you called it, a roller coaster. So we'll obviously be watching very carefully in the next few weeks because big things are about to happen. And I want to thank you and wish you good luck with the book. I'm sure it'll fly off the shelves.
Yes. It flew just like the plane to Vietnam without Donna on board. Mia, yeah, you agree. Updated documentary. We do. So I'm glad they're doing this one. And Jane, I know you say this a lot. I just disagree with you on it. You said that you think she wants to incur federal charges, or she's going state to state to incur federal charges to get a pardon from Trump. I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't see that at all. That's just me. I don't see that. But I love having you here and I appreciate your opinions. But I know we've disagreed on that one. But that's what's fun. We can all talk about it and disagree or agree. Maestro says, it's sad to think the only father figure in those boys' lives will have been whatever guy was lead of the Coca-Cola affiliated foundation Wendi happened to be working for that month. Yeah. Armand says she changed her looks. She didn't know that. You didn't know that. So this is what was on Reddit. Give me a second. So this apparently was her just like a couple weeks after her mom's trial. Hold on. Are y'all seeing it? Yeah. Armand, if you were to see her walking on the street, would you think that was her? I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I think her hair looks better curly, but she looks so different. So somebody posted this apparently on Instagram. So apparently she was with a group. They were visiting. It's called the Marshall something Memorial Foundation or something. Is it Marshall? It was something that she's an alumni of, and somebody else, this cohort or something, was visiting Austin. Juliet, Botox injectors obviously hate her. I just wonder, there's lots of things they can do. And maybe she changed her appearance for the trial, because I don't know how you go from looking like she did at her mom's trial to this, but Jane, you said that a lot. It's kind of a joke. Oh, you're thinking from Wendi. Okay. Yeah, I think Ruth and Phil have kind of realized like they're not going to have a relationship with those boys, and they just said what they wanted to say at Donna's sentencing. That's my opinion. Audrey, Harvey is a moron for not getting on that plane, and Donna was freaking out making sure they didn't take him to the car. I know. Yeah. Hey, my father's alibi. It's good to see you, Allison. Yeah, it might just be the angle, because this was just like a couple weeks. This was dated in September. She testified in late August in her mom's trial, so this was just a few weeks later. That's what the person posted. I mean, I don't know. I don't think she could be pregnant. I mean, she's like late 40s. I mean, stuff happens, I know. Hey, Cat Ride, good to see you. Yeah. John says, isn't that what she looked like on The Weakest Link? I felt like on The Weakest Link, her hair had been more like hot rolled, like bigger curls. And this is more like that natural curl. I could be wrong, but anyhow. It might just be a bad angle and not a flattering outfit. And then the hair, but it is very interesting trying to look different. I will say that. Armand, she's probably telling everyone that her family did it without her knowledge. I do wonder, what is she saying to the boys? Like, yeah, the government's gotten it wrong twice with grandmom and uncle. I mean, it's wrong. Or is she like, yeah, they did it. I had no idea. I'm very curious. But with that, I will say good night, and book club again next Sunday. God, we'll be in May. Is that crazy? We'll be doing chapters 3 and 4. So I need more people to read the book, and then we're going to be ready to go. But it's so good seeing y'all, and have a good week. Oh, tomorrow's Monday. Good night. Like and subscribe because every case has more to the story. I'm Leslie B.